On the morning of April 19, 1995, downtown Oklahoma City was moving through an ordinary workday. Parents dropped children at daycare. Federal employees arrived at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. People stood in lines, answered phones, opened files, and started meetings. Then, at 9:02 a.m., a massive explosion tore through the north side of the building. In seconds, offices became open air, floors collapsed, windows shattered across blocks, and a cloud of dust rose over the city. The blast killed 167 people immediately or in the immediate aftermath, injured hundreds more, and left rescuers searching through concrete, steel, paper, and silence. A rescue worker later died after being struck by falling debris, bringing the final death toll to 168. It was not a battlefield, and it was not overseas. It was an act of domestic terrorism in the heart of the United States. The target was the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, a 9-story structure that housed offices for federal agencies, including the Social Security Administration, the Secret Service, and others. It also contained a daycare center, which made the human cost especially devastating. More than a third of the building was destroyed, but the damage did not stop there. Hundreds of nearby buildings were destroyed or damaged, dozens of vehicles were wrecked, and the financial cost reached an estimated $652 million. Yet the numbers alone cannot capture the horror. Survivors described being thrown from desks, buried under debris, or suddenly unable to find coworkers who had been standing nearby seconds earlier. The bombing forced Americans to confront a terrifying reality. The threat had not come from a foreign army or an international network, but from citizens radicalized against their own government. The man who carried out the attack was Timothy McVeigh, a Gulf War veteran and anti-government extremist. He was assisted by Terry Nichols, who helped with planning and preparation. McVeigh had developed a fierce anger toward the federal government, especially after two highly publicized law enforcement confrontations, Ruby Ridge in Idaho in 1992 and the siege near Waco, Texas, in 1993. To McVeigh and others in extremist circles, these events became symbols of what they believed was federal tyranny. The 1994 federal assault weapons ban deepened their resentment. McVeigh did not see the Murrah building as a place filled with individual human beings. He saw it as a symbol of the government he hated. That dehumanizing leap is central to understanding terrorism. Ideology turns people into targets, and symbols into excuses for mass murder. McVeigh chose April 19 deliberately. It was the second anniversary of the deadly end of the Waco siege, a date that held significance in anti-government extremist circles. It was also the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord, the opening battles of the American Revolutionary War. To McVeigh, this timing was meant to frame the attack as retaliation and rebellion. But the result was not a revolution, it was the killing of office workers, visitors, children, and bystanders. The date reveals how extremist narratives can twist history into justification. Events that many Americans remember as complex tragedies or founding moments were turned into a private calendar of vengeance. The bombing was not spontaneous. It was planned, timed, and intended to send a political message through mass casualties. In the immediate aftermath, Oklahoma City became a rescue zone. Firefighters, police officers, medical teams, construction workers, volunteers, and search dogs converged on the collapsed building. They worked through unstable debris, broken glass, exposed metal, and the constant threat of further collapse. Some survivors were pulled out alive after hours trapped under rubble. Others were located too late. Across the country, people watched televised images of rescuers carrying the injured and searching for children from the building's daycare center. The response showed both the scale of the destruction and the courage of those who entered it. But it also created an emotional wound that stretched far beyond Oklahoma. The bombing became a national trauma because it attacked not only a building, but the sense of safety inside everyday civic life. At first, fear and confusion spread quickly. In the 1990s, many Americans associated large terrorist attacks with international groups, and early speculation reflected that uncertainty. But the investigation soon moved in a different direction. The FBI opened a case known as Akbom, one of the largest investigations in its history. Agents, local police, forensic specialists, and federal prosecutors began piecing together fragments from the blast scene, witness accounts, rental records, and physical evidence. Investigators collected thousands of pounds of evidence and pursued an enormous number of leads. The challenge was not just to identify who had done it, but to reconstruct a conspiracy from scattered traces. In a destroyed urban block, tiny details mattered: vehicle parts, documents, fingerprints, phone numbers, and the movements of suspects before and after the attack. One of the most striking turns in the case happened less than 90 minutes after the bombing. Timothy McVeigh was driving north when Oklahoma Highway Patrolman Charlie Hanger stopped him because his car had no license plate. During the stop, Hanger discovered McVeigh was carrying an illegal weapon and arrested him. At that moment, the officer did not know he had detained the man who had just carried out the deadliest domestic terrorist attack in American history. McVeigh was taken into custody on a routine weapons charge while investigators in Oklahoma City were still working through the chaos. This ordinary traffic stop became a pivotal moment. Without it, McVeigh might have had more time to disappear, destroy evidence, or complicate the search. Instead, he was already behind bars as the case began closing around him. Forensic evidence rapidly connected McVeigh to the bombing. Investigators traced the rental truck used in the attack, followed records and witness descriptions, and linked McVeigh and Nichols to preparations before April 19. A raid on McVeigh's home uncovered information that led investigators to additional evidence, including connections to where supplies had been obtained. Terry Nichols was identified as a key accomplice who assisted in planning and preparation. Michael and Lori Fortier were also later identified as accomplices, with Michael Fortier eventually testifying about what he knew. The investigation was enormous: tens of thousands of interviews, thousands of pounds of evidence, and nearly 1 billion pieces of information. Its scale reflected the stakes. The government had to prove not only guilt, but the path from extremist belief to coordinated violence. The trials began in 1997, and the legal process became another national focal point. Prosecutors presented the bombing as a calculated act of terrorism, not a protest gone wrong or an expression of political frustration. McVeigh was convicted and sentenced to death. Terry Nichols was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001, at the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. The sentences brought legal accountability, but not closure in any simple sense. For victims' families and survivors, the courtroom could confirm facts and assign punishment, but it could not restore lives or erase trauma. The case became a grim reminder that justice after mass violence is necessary, but it is never the same as repair. The bombing also changed federal law and security policy. In 1996, Congress passed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act. Among other provisions, it limited access to habeas corpus, making it harder in some cases for prisoners to challenge their detention in federal court. The law remains controversial because it was born from a real demand for security and accountability, but it also reshaped important legal protections. Congress also approved measures to increase security around federal buildings. Barriers, setbacks, access controls, and threat assessments became more central to the design and protection of government facilities. In that sense, the bombing changed the physical landscape of American civic space. The architecture of trust gave way, in many places, to the architecture of prevention. The Oklahoma City bombing remained the deadliest terrorist attack in United States history until September 11, 2001. But even after September 11 shifted national attention toward foreign terrorist networks, Oklahoma City continued to stand as a warning about threats from within. It showed that domestic extremism can be organized, ideological, and catastrophic. It also challenged assumptions about what terrorists look like and where danger comes from. McVeigh was a white American veteran, not an outsider to the society he attacked. That fact is uncomfortable, but essential. Domestic terrorism often grows from familiar cultural symbols, grievances, conspiracy thinking, and political rage. The bombing demonstrated how radicalization can turn personal resentment into public violence, especially when a person believes murder is a legitimate form of political communication. Today, the site of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building is home to the Oklahoma City National Memorial. Empty chairs represent those who were killed, including smaller chairs for the children. A reflecting pool marks the space between the moments before and after the blast. The memorial does not focus on the attacker. It centers the victims, survivors, rescuers, and the city that carried the wound. That choice matters. Acts of terrorism are designed to dominate memory with fear and spectacle. Memorials resist that by restoring names, faces, and human dignity. The Oklahoma City bombing is remembered not only as a crime or a case study in extremism, but as a tragedy that revealed both the vulnerability and resilience of a society attacked from within. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.